Hi everyone, this is Nikki Yu and you're watching the Philippine Market Update. This is the Awesome 10X. It's July 7, so there's a lot of shopping sales right now in Shopee and Lazada. Maybe you want to check out if you're buying something. But let's take a look. Are there some shopping discounts in the Philippine market? So a quick look in the Philippine Stock Index tells you that the PSCI is 6,943. However, there are companies indeed that are down 70 to 80% over the last 5, 6 years. And should we actually assume that these companies can actually go up? Let's take a look at one particular company, and the name is Petron. So actually, I'm going to read a very good stock commentary for you. And to be honest, it's understandable. In this stock commentary, as you could see by Mercado Bercada, Petron stock has been a dog for years. For 5 years to be exact. So he says, does he bite? No, but he can hurt you in other ways. You've squandered your market dominance and your snacks suck. So, alright, let's read this. Recently, July 6, Petron's board voted to file a 50 billion peso bond sale. Now, the stock market actually made this go up. Stock price went up 7% on the eve of this news because the proceeds would be used to refinance old debt. It's true, these obligations have been there, and the fact that you can refinance at a lower rate means that Petron is going to make some money as what you call savings. So I'm going to read it for you. The bottom line is that investors and traders love the move. The stock was up over 7% anyway on that day of the announcement. However, this doesn't change the fact that Petron's business model is the same. They didn't acquire a business. Their earnings are not going to change. This is basically a debt shuffle. Interest rates are super low right now. They've got to borrow 50 billion pesos and pay the 50 billion pesos from the last couple of years that they've done a borrowing. So they're just using the money to pay off debts that they already have at higher rates. So that it's really just a debt reshuffle. It's true, solid business practice that you actually do this. You're not the only one who did this. I think a lot of companies, whether it was Jollibee, whether it was Globe, Ayala Corporation, JG Summit, PLDT, basically almost everyone, I would say, almost everyone did. They refinance all of the interest rates at lower prices. It's almost as if, let's say you have a 50 million peso home and you can refinance your 50 million pesos home. If it used to be 7% interest rates, you can actually refinance it today at about 5% interest rates. A 2% interest rate savings is a huge amount of money if we're talking about a huge amount of sum. And this is big, this 50 billion pesos or nearing $1 billion. So, yeah. Now, there's also this news that Petron is operating again their Bataan refinery and has been doing so since June 1. So, this commentary, however, said that Petron, however, is a dog exactly for the last 5 years. And even during Duterte's win, neither any good relationship with the government of the Philippines actually made the company go up. It says here that although the excitement of a premature economic reopening is probably the reason as well, Petron's nation's undisputed dominant market player in terms of retail gasoline sales location network and overall market footprint seems to tell us that the market is really not appreciative of the Petron position. Says here that the market has been asking the same questions about Petron. Will the stock price increase as the demand destruction from COVID slowly ease? He says probably, but the pre-COVID price was only around 4 pesos amid a terrible downtrend that didn't show any signs of letting up. Okay, so it's valid. So we are aware that Petron has been a dog for precisely the last couple of years. Not the only company though. So we will see. What exactly is this Bataan resuming operation? So it resumed. Let's read this. Petron, the largest oil refining and marketing company on Monday, said it's resumed its refinery operations in Bataan last month. Refinery and petrochemical plants are running now, and they've temporarily closed down its 180,000 barrel per day refinery in May and reopened it in October 2020. Again, they closed it again last February 10 and then resumed on June 1. This was granted approval by the Authority of Bataan, AFAB, in December last year. They benefit from better timing of payments and accurate tax basis for value-added tax. The company also looked to raise 50 billion pesos in fixed-rate bonds. It's gonna have it in the PDEX And it will offer initially 18 billion pesos worth of bonds. Proceeds will be used to fund the oil firm's general funding requirements. The oil firm appointed BDO, China Bank, Philippine Commercial Capital, PNB Investments, SB to be the joint book runners. Petron booked 1.73 billion in net income in the first quarter. This is a turnaround from a 5 billion loss in the same quarter last year, higher than the 1.2 billion income in the fourth quarter of 2020. Ang is saying that the oil firm will continue to deliver good performance unless there's a strict lockdown again. The Chief Financial Officer, Emmanuel Aranya, said oil firm has yet to completely overcome the impact of pandemic, with restrictions continuing to be implemented worldwide. However, a gradual recovery, evident in the upward trajectory of volume and income performance of the oil firm in the first quarter, is of course a positive. Petron set aside 11 billion peso capex, higher than 8.5 billion in 2021. This is for the ongoing construction of steam generator plants, strategic retail network expansion, maintenance requirements. Petron has put up 14 new stations in the first quarter with plans to build more for the rest of the year. Okay, so I'll explain a few things happening in Petron and what I think is happening here. Let's take a look at the chart. So PCOR for the last 5 years has been a strict downtrend. Yup, 10 all the way down to about 2 pesos here. Can we say the same thing happening through of Semirara? Also downtrend, 44 to 8. Can we also say the same thing true happening with ExxonMobil or Chevron? For the last 5 years, 2014 to 2021, 100 all the way to 30. That's ExxonMobil. How about Chevron, CVX? New York Stock Exchange. So it is a very liquid exchange in the world. Chevron managed to still stay unchanged, but it's actually for the last 5 years a dog as well. The fact that 140 is just $100, even fell $60 when the entire US market was on a rampage, tells you that the world in general hated oil stocks. Oil stocks in general, coal stocks in general. So no matter if you are the dominant, and we're talking about the world because Chevron, ExxonMobil are the world's largest, not just Philippines, I'm saying that the sector has been weak perennially. And it's very clear why. Because the world has transitioned away from dirty coal, dirty oil, to clean energy. For the last 5-7 years, the world has opened up, warmed up to the likelihood that in the next 10-20 years, the world wants to be carbon neutral by 2050. China pledged, USA pledged, the Paris Climate Change Agreement, all of that tells you that the world, not just the Philippines, the world in general does not want to invest in dinosaurs. Dinosaurs because they think that the shift to clean energy is the biggest climate change secular trend for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And with that shift means that you've got charging stations. We're talking about electric vehicles. We're talking about batteries. And it's not something that happened just during the pandemic. It's something that was happening for quite a while. And it's something that maybe a lot of Filipinos have woke up to. But I'd say a following truth as well. Because clean energy is a requirement over the decades, as a country, even if we wanted to just shift away from coal and oil, even if we wanted to, we couldn't. So Saudi knows about this. Middle East knows about this. And if you notice, in general, the world has to rely on oil. 70-80% of the world's energy is still using oil. Although the transition is happening fast in clean energy, or wind, or solar, or wind, solar, nuclear, even uranium, it's not as if I can just switch it tomorrow. You couldn't. So the base case of investing in Petron is the fact that as a whole, if you take a look at the entire energy requirements, you can just check a simple energy requirements of the world. It was 2018 when the entire world knew that the world energy consumption, look at this, blue here. Okay, can you see this? Let's go to each one. So world energy consumption since 1820s in charts. This is nuclear using uranium. This is hydroelectric. This is natural gas. This is oil. This is coal. This is biofuels. For over 200 years, we were relying on oil and coal. Over 200 years. And that's why it made Middle East so rich that because they have oil. Now, in the Philippines, we are trying to refine and we still have no choice but to actually use coal and gas. And that's one of the reasons why, if you'll notice, did Semirara start climbing up? Yes. From about 8 pesos, it rose to 17. I don't expect this to reverse the downtrend. However, this is what you call a mean reversion play. Could go to 26. Semirara Mining and Power is trying to transition away from coal and also doing renewable. So if you're going to ask me why is DMC going up from about 3 to 4 pesos here to about 6 pesos, 6.50, it's the acknowledgement. This is just my theory, of course. It's the acknowledgement that no matter how far the trajectory of e-commerce, cashless payments, clean energy, electric vehicles, 5G, all over the world, as they say, the future is here. It's just unevenly distributed. The Philippines will not go into that world. We are still going to be dinosaur world for about 15 to 20 years. Meaning, you don't have self-driving vehicles. You're not going to have a use case for LiDARs. Even if you want to go solar, a few companies will, but not the entire residential construction builders of the Philippines. Example, in the US, California, it's a mandate, it's a requirement. Every time you're going to build a house, it has to be solar. 50% of it, I think in California, all of the new homes constructed is a solar panel, which actually propels everyone to actually have no choice. If I'm going to buy a home, it has to be solar panel. So they have to buy it from Sunrun, SunPower. They have to install it with micro inverters with Enphase and SolarEdge. It tells you a complete dominant reason to invest in that category if it's in the US. So example, for solar. It's almost the same thing happening true in the Chinese region and also Europe. But in Philippines, we're talking about just the Philippines. It's not. We have no choice. You want to have an electric car? I'm sorry, but we can't. Is there a charging station? No. Even if you have the capacity to buy a Tesla, let's say, it's also not possible. I mean, the range anxiety, the driving range, unless you have a solar car, you have a charging station at home, and you have charging stations in China and in the US, they're building like, in US, Biden promised 500,000 charging stations in America for the year. And then China's doing something like more than 2 million stations. So it's a fight between them. So just the fact that the Philippines will never go to Jetson's age within the next 10 to 15 years tells me that any person who owns a Petron gas station in the Philippines is expected to actually generate some income. Look at all the cars in the Philippines. It's ICE, internal combustion engine. In other words, we are living 30 years behind the world, maybe 20 years behind. Now, it is a good thing for Petron because it means that they will never actually lose their income, and therefore, in general, they have money to pay for the 50 billion peso bond that they just refinanced because the Bataan refinery operations would have a customer. So can you imagine if you don't have a customer and if the Philippines transition outright clean energy within a year, it would have spelled bad things. I don't have to I don't have to spell out the words, but you know what's gonna happen. So that's one. Let's understand a few things. Okay, so you know about Petron. It's the largest oil refining and marketing company in the Philippines. Leading player in Malaysia, we have a combined refining capacity of nearly 270,000 barrels per day, fueling the lives of millions of Filipinos and Malaysians. So it's not just the Philippines, but also Malaysia. Leading through partnership and innovation, we power industries, driving economic growth, fueling the future. Are our airplanes today electric? The truth is, the future is eVTOLs, electric vehicle takeoff landing. It's actually already in the US, in Europe, in China. But I don't expect you guys to stop flying Cebu Pacific Airlines. I don't expect everyone to just not fly an airline that still relies a lot on jet fuel. So just think about the requirements of the world and you can understand the reason of investing in a company in oil and gas industry. The world actually understands that. That's why take a look at XLE. XLE is Energy Select in New York. After going down precipitously from $100 all the way to $24, this almost looks like a complete copycat of Petron, isn't it? For the last 6 years, 10 pesos going to 2 pesos, from 2 pesos going to 5 pesos, or an outright 100% increase. Isn't it? Ting, ting, ting. It's what you call, it's not called too big to fail. It's just the fact that you cannot transition as quick as EV supporters want. You just can't do it at once. Even in America, they can't even do it at once. It's gonna take about 5 to 10 years. So, no matter how fast the world is transitioning, it's almost as if asking me, everyone has to just go online e-commerce, so all the malls have to die. So SM Prime has to go down 10 pesos tomorrow because everyone's just shopping online. That's a kind of theory that people who will automatically dismiss that Petron is not gonna be bought. I mean, that is such a what's kind of a theory. It's not enough. So, that's one reason why I think there's a bull on Petron. I'm bullish on Petron. I've been buying at 3 pesos 30 cents and I'm gonna tell you why I think 330 to 350 would most likely, even at the worst case scenario, still stay here at about 4 pesos or 5 pesos. So I'm not saying that it will reverse to 10, but it doesn't seem to me personally that that there will be worse news happening for Petron. Consider the fact that Philippines is energy consumption dominated still by coal, no? So let's now take a look at the Philippines energy sources. Even your Aboitiz Power generates power for Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. They want to make it balanced. They want to do it 50-50, but it's not gonna happen overnight. It's gonna happen within 10 years. So Aboitiz Power relies a lot on coal, on coal plants, you can check it out. We talked about their balance. So this is the Philippines primary energy. Take a look at that. 31% oil, coal. Then you've got this red, 22%. Very little on wind, solar, biofuel. Hydro. Natural gas is 8%. That's your first gen. Biomass. So, of course, Philippines want to change that for the next 20 years. And so the Philippine utilities right now are boosting the renewable shares in their energy mix. That's correct. From an investment standpoint, Semirara has to diversify, Aboitiz Power has to diversify, and Petron at some point in time has to also think about becoming an electric vehicle charging station. Because if all the cars will become electric vehicles, what's the use of having an internal combustion engine? But that's when. If you invest too early, wala rin. That's, di ba? Think about it. Bakit? Meron na bang electric vehicle sa Philippines? Think about it. Of course, Shell in Europe has invested in charging stations. Electrify America, Ford did as well. Let me show to you RDSA, Shell, Royal Dutch Shell. Yun. This is Royal Dutch Shell. Okay, so basically, the world knows, and I mean, maybe what investors have to hear from Mr. Ramonang is, we plan to shift, I'm not sure if this is the right words, just like how Aboitiz Power, Semirara appeased all the investors, they should acknowledge that the world is transitioning to a climate change, carbon neutral world. That's known. That's known. Now, Petron has to transition, but not yet. Maybe 20 years after, maybe 15 years after. It's not 15 months later. And what do you know about the US? It's far pa. I'm not saying that you don't invest in clean energy. We are. But investing in clean energy the way that Filipinos did with ASEN is a good thing. What Ayala Corp did, investing in energy, what About Power is doing. But yun nga, look at the numbers today. It's still the leader. You go out in the Philippines, do you have to use oil? So I think it's a utility. And utility companies in general are taken a look at because it's the same thing with water, which is your water and electricity. So Meralco, your PLDT, your utilities. So even if it's an oil and gas company, think of it as well as a utility. Okay, so let's take a look how many people rely in the Philippines on oil. Let's go to the financial reports, annual reports. 2020 is a bad year, but then again, let's try to see how bad was bad for Petron. Okay? Committed to the nation, we are Petron, message to shareholders, all right. For the last 5 years, the reason why Petron never had a buyer is because for the last 5 years, it wasn't the pandemic that was hounding Petron. The world was transitioning to solar, to wind, to Tesla, there. Anyway, let's read what Petron is capable of. Petron is the largest oil company in the Philippines, operating the country's only remaining refinery. Leading player in the Malaysian market, we have a combined refining capacity of 270,000 barrels per day. In the Philippines, we are supplying 40% of the country's total fuel requirements through the operation of 180,000 barrels per day in Bataan. Since there was no demand in oil, was it correct that they shut down their Bataan refinery operations in 2020? I'd say that that's correct, yes, because you didn't have a lot of demand. Okay, so this is about gasoline, diesel, LPG, jet fuel, kerosene, and petrochemicals. All about transportation, mobility. You ask the Filipinos, is it important for you to go to office? They'll say, remote work naman. Yes and no. Remote work is not gonna be 100% of the entire Philippine economy. So you will always have a demand for people who need to go away. They need to go out. They need to meet somebody. They still have to go out of the house, even if they're vaccinated or whatever, even after the COVID passes, or even if it's not even passing yet. So we move our products mainly by sea to nearly 30 terminals located across our archipelago. Throughout our robust distribution network, we fuel strategic industries, power generation, manufacturing, mining, agribusiness, among others. Petron also supplies jet fuel at key airports to international and domestic carriers. Okay, so how can you go to Boracay for your vacation? Airlines. How will that airline go? Is it electric? No, it's jet fuel. Okay, case closed. Through our service station network, the most extensive in the country, we retail gasoline, diesel, auto, LPG to motorists and public transport sector. Our wide range of world-class fuels includes Blaze 100, XCS, Extra Advanced, Turbo Diesel, Diesel Max. We sell our LPG brands Gasol and Fiesta Gas to households and commercial consumers through an extensive retail network. We source our fuel additives from our blending capacity facility at the Subic Bay Freeport. Our product leadership meets all the global standards. We have twice the capacity in our Tondo, Manila from our former plant in Pandacan. Okay, so we also have distributed our business in Malaysia. We are doing refining, distribution, and marketing. We are operating an 88,000 barrel per day refinery in Port Dickson, Lumot PME plant, 10 terminals including 4 affiliates, more than 700 service stations. As part of San Miguel, we are the largest, most diversified conglomerates in the Philippines, expanding to new businesses, leading provider of local customer solutions in energy and derivative business. Okay. Securing our energy requirements is crucial in any national crisis. This is your chairman, Mr. Ramon Ang. There will be no supply disruption. We're aware how important it is for the economy to reach their destination. So basically, it's an infrastructure necessity. Because you have to go out and about, you need oil. Now, let's see. Of course, 2020 is an exceptional, challenging time for the oil industry. It was the negative oil time. Indeed, it will go down as one of the most unprecedented years in modern history. Okay? Alright. Securing our energy requirements is, however, crucial in any national crisis. How can we reach our destinations without it? Our entire supply chain, refinery, terminal, service station work hard to ensure there's enough product inventory to supply the local demand. Petron was at the forefront of fueling vital sectors, transporting essential goods, personnel, You're buying stuff from Lazada. How does it get to you? Probably delivered by a Grab personnel or a Lala Move personnel. Alright, how is that motorcycle running? Ask yourself, is it oil? Yes. So far, we don't have as much electric scooters in the Philippines as far as I know. Although yes, definitely in the US, they've got new. In China, they've got that. RC Moto, electric vehicles for the last mile delivery operators. So here, we're relying on oil. Okay, so transportation, e-commerce, all of that is running from oil-based deliveries. Okay, so accommodating the needs of households, home-based businesses, and commercial establishment that stayed open. Why are we important? Because of our extensive network. Petron is the largest in the Philippines. Okay, so they've got more than how many stations? Let's see it. Says here that more than 10,000 stations, I think. World, in the Philippines and in Malaysia. Okay, so let's see. Our financial performance. Okay, we strive to keep the pandemic impact as little as possible. We try to cost-save efforts on utilities, crude use, and sourcing. However, the lockdown made us drop 40% in domestic volume, 13 billion pesos inventory losses, during which the strictest quarantine took effect, March, April, May, June. This left a dent in our full-year financial performance, a 5 billion peso loss. Okay, our consolidated sales volume was just, for Philippines and Malaysia, it was down 27%. From 2019's 107 million barrels, we're now standing at 78.6 million barrels. Our consolidated revenues declined 44%. From 500 billion pesos in 2019, it's now 286 billion pesos. So we're suffering from $10 to $5. Okay? Impact of the pandemic. Overall, we incurred a net loss of 11 billion for the whole of 2020. This is huge versus our net income in 2019 of 2.3 billion. Should we forgive them? I think so. That's possible naman. But on good news, for 2021, we're actually growing. So they said they earned 2 billion pesos for 2021. Okay, following through our commitment to our customers, tune up, gas up. So yan, LPG, gas fuel. Paano kayo magluluto pag walang gas, guys? Paano kayo nagluluto? Logistics, paano kayo gumagalaw kung walang mga oil? Magaling magsalita, mahirap mag-isip. Ensuring a stable fuel supply amid hard times. Petron Bataan Refinery remained a critical and strategic asset for the country. This is the Philippines' only remaining refining capacity facility capable of supplying 40% of our domestic demand. PBR, which has a Nielsen Complexity Index of 13, ranks in the top 10% of all refineries in Asia. In China, do they have a refinery? The answer is yes. That is Sinopec 386. They also have Petro China, which is from the term itself, PetroChina, petroleum, 857. Same lang naman, the world in general was disgusted with all the dirty coal. So, $8 fell down to $3. So, in general, the industry is at, the industry knows na it's a weak industry. Why would the stock price fall? It's because people think that there will be less earnings going forward. 386, 857, yan. Okay, it just looks like it went up from 2 to 3, no? But in the last 5 years, PetroChina was also in a downtrend. Boom. 11 all the way to 2 to 3.6. So I'm not saying that Petron is a secular trend. No. Petron is a secular downtrend. If we're talking about 20 years from now, 15 years from now. But in the short term, in cycle time, we have no choice. Petron is gonna be going up, I think, in the next 2 years. Because we, as a country, will ease from the pandemic. We will be going out. And our domestic demand is gonna rely a lot on energy requirements, which is still sufficed by oil and gas, and that's Petron. So despite challenges on the production side, refinery will still serve as a country's Petron central import hub. Import and export also needs oil. So before the year ended, refinery was approved as a registered enterprise by Authority of Bataan, allowing it to avail fiscal incentives For 60 years, Petron Refinery has been an integral part of Bataan's landscape, creating jobs and fueling local communities. So ito, you can see naman eh. Alright. So it means that the Philippines is a 15-year dinosaur and you have to live with it. Fueling journeys mattering through a reliable supply chain. LPG, petrofuel logistics. So yun, ito yung mga Petron lube oil blending plant in Manila. They have produced over 54 million liters for local and overseas customers, putting the health and safety of our people first. Strong and steady in Malaysia. Let's understand this. They have 720 stations in Malaysia, focused on so yan, this is what you see in Malaysia. So yun din, mga cars din, di naman electric. Southeast Asia is not yet electric unless we're talking about just the most affluent, which is still very few. I guess there are some Tesla cars in Singapore because there's like billionaires there. But that's not the majority of the world. So you don't need to think about it. It's just mostly in China, US, and a little bit part in Norway, in Europe. Mostly in Europe. Upper parts of Europe. Kasi it's cheaper for them to use solar. The reason why naman Norway is like 100% or Sweden, why it's like 95% wind and solar, is because it's cheaper for them even before the advent of clean energy. That's why Vestas Wind Systems, the largest wind turbine in the world, puro Europe, it's all Norway, Scandinavian countries basically. We made our LPG products more accessible to more households, growing our distribution network. Okay, so these are all happening in the annual report. Let's try to learn more. Sige. Okay, CSR performance, COVID, community, yep. Okay, so same people in the management team. There. So you don't expect them to change their plans. They will still do that. Okay, why is this quite important in their board of directors? Okay, Carlos Petilla has served as independent board director. He also served in the government, Department of Energy, if you recall. Secretary of Department of Energy 2012 to 2015, provincial governor of the province of Leyte, independent director, and So, yun. So you've got basically people in Petron who can assure you that they will stay here no matter which type of government we have. Okay, dividends says here that on March 10, Petron declared 10 cents paid out on 2020. Preferred share dividend payments, what you're noticing here, however, is that for the last 5-6 years though, most of the wealth of Petron as a utility was given to the dividend holders. That's also true. In respect of the cash dividends, the series ABC, the cash dividends for that was a lot of money. So, that could have been one of the reasons why Petron as a common stock also suffered. Because all of the income first goes to preferred shareholders. Yun. So that's one thing. And this is a bond again, so it's also gonna go to the bond holders. So should you buy Petron bonds? Well, if you like, yes. Will the Petron common stock go up? Well, because it saved money, yes. So it's a dog, and I think it will continue to be a dog, but it's also not correct that it will not. So I don't think it's going to 10. But the analysis that it goes from 3 to 5 is likely because we just have no choice. We just have no choice but to have some oil because as a country, we can't just transition. So it's more of like that. There's just no alternative. Yeah, so that's the reason why. So you will see, in my view, this sales improve over time. From a decline of 44%, it's gonna go back to 500 billion, almost the same sales in 2018 to 2019. Maybe it takes 2 years. So they will nevertheless earn about 2 billion to 7 billion in the next 2 to 3 years. So yun. So they will just have to work for the next 3 to 5 years doing the same thing. and getting the same demand from customers, 500 billion pesos, that's about $10 billion. So I think the key metric that we'll take a look on Petron is simply the ease of COVID. That would be the catalyst. The ease of travel restrictions. And it's gonna be an infrastructure support for the Philippine economy. Whether the business secular trend is e-commerce delivery, last mile delivery, food delivery, everything that Uber, Grab, taxis, all of the Lala moves, they all need oil. Transportation, guys, that's important. Okay, so live viewer commentary. All HC. I'll try to understand it tomorrow. Or next week na lang, guys. Next week, I'll try to cover All HC, Macro Asia, ABA. Yun. So, here's all my simple analysis for Petron is, no, I think that the people felt that 10 to 3 was a support for Petron, but they're not also thinking that it's gonna go to 7, 10 pesos. So, siguro, tingin lang nila resistance dito sa mga 5 pesos. Maybe it goes to 4, 4.2. And then hintay na lang. I don't know if it will even go to 6 eh. But if you're gonna ask me, 3 peso 50 cents below 3, you already have a buyer. People like it. The refinery operations, fuel up to win. So yun lang, parang it's not so special. It's just a utility company. That's it. If you have any ideas, let's talk about it next week. I'll think about that. All HC, the reason why we like to talk about it, because it's a logistics company. All HC is trying to be a logistics hub, and logistics as a secular trend is wonderful. So yun. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching.